All right, let me just refresh the page so I can make sure we're live. It's not showing me that I'm live yet. All right, we are live. So welcome
Welcome,
to
people.
this awesome stream we're doing. There is an ongoing question in the metal community. Where does the breakdown come from? Now, if you don't know what a breakdown is, your ears have been hiding from.
If you don't know what a breakdown is, you probably never listened to metal in the first place.
I mean, no matter what metal you listen to,
Even in old school metal, like there's breakdowns. It's everywhere. It's just
even
always
if you
been
listen to,
around.
like, a breakdown is basically like it's like a. I'm trying to think like the basic way pop music is written. There's like a chorus and a verse. Because when I'm in the car with my family, they always listen to pop music. So like, there's always that part where they have that that ongoing beat that it for me sounds kind of like a pop breakdown.
Well, the way I see it, a breakdown is really just what it says. It's breaking down a riff and making it more basic and simplistic
It
and
takes it and it
slower,
makes it slower and
slower,
heavier
heavier,
and
and
gets the crowd moving.
yeah, I guess it's very groovy. There's a ton of groove in it, and um to me, breakdowns come in many different forms, and we'll actually get to that. Obviously, if we all know the modern breakdown, although back in the 80s, it pretty much never sounded anything like the modern breakdown is a lot different, you know? And we'll definitely get in that. Although I'm trying to find your channel, Joe. I cannot find your goddamn
You want me to
channel.
send you the video link?
Yeah, do that.
I've got it. Hold on. It took me a little bit to find it too. I'll just send it in our chat. And there you go.
All right.
I love the title of this stream. It's just so perfect. So if
It
you're
is.
watching, just say hi.
It honestly is. It's just one of the greatest things ever.
Also, if you're watching this stream, which we only have one viewer now, but I'm sure out of the 172 people subscribed to me, a couple more people will join. And just put your thoughts into the chat so we can kind of have a discussion, because that's what this Friday is all about.
You know what I'm saying?
I'm so tired. I stayed up till like 3 a.m.
Okay, so Joe, did you want to talk about your opinion on where you feel like the breakdown came from?
All right, so I feel like the breakdown, because like obviously deathcore, which is where you hear a lot of breakdowns these days. I mean, the two albums I've been listening to the most, even like this whole month, have been The Great Collapse by For an Autopsy and Hate by Larry Is Murder. And there are so many killer breakdowns on those records, and of course, deathcore, in my opinion, is a mix of death metal and hardcore, which hardcore comes from hardcore punk, in my opinion. But it's basically a kind of stripped down version of metal that has the hardcore punk mentality about it. And I recently started listening to hardcore, just straight up hardcore music, a couple weeks ago after I did something very ignorant, and there's this little hardcore show that popped up, and I was just walking around, and this venue had a hardcore show by a band called Absolute Suffering, and I chickened out. I went home, and immediately after I got home, I was drowning myself in my own tears because I skipped out on going to see this great band after I had listened to their album on Bandcamp. Um, But yeah, in the first Hatebreed record, there's a lot of breakdowns, which are kind of like the I guess the template for modern breakdowns. But
Yeah.
as I hear a lot of breakdowns in groove metal, especially in Pantera, which is like the biggest groove metal band, and how they carry on that. They don't have the modern breakdown, but the early breakdowns are I see in Pantera, and no, not in their glam albums, just their groove albums. Metal Magic is a killer album, though.
I have some interesting thoughts on that, but Joe, see, here's the thing, guys. Like Joe would know more about um the hardcore punk side of things because he is a huge hardcore punk fan. Weren't you into like hardcore punk way before you've been into metal? Is that correct,
Oh
Joe?
yeah,
Yeah. So I do have some interesting thoughts on Pantera, though. I don't hate Pantera. I know I've said it before, but I don't legit like hate them like all the way. I do like buy one album by them, uh, pretty much. But yeah, but that's my opinion. Doesn't really matter on that what I think of the band. But what I will say though is that I do think though, and not a lot of people really realize this, but I feel like Pantera is one of the first metalcore bands. And I know that sounds really weird to label them as that, but I want you to think about this
that
for a
should be a
second.
T-shirt. That should be a
I
T-shirt.
don't really,
Pantera was the first metal.
I don't really know. Well, yeah, because like I don't think groove metal is much of a thing to be honest. Like, I don't
I
know. I
mean, to
just
be
don't.
honest, what are groove metal bands?
I
Pantera and
there's not that many.
I mean,
There's Pantera, Gojira, I think, and then like a few others like Lamb of God
I
and
mean,
Machine Head. But that's like
Gojira
about
is like tech death, and then like there's all Phil Anselmo's side projects, but they're all kind of like
and
sludge.
I've always considered Lamb of God a metalcore band. It's in the same what else? Machine Head. I don't know. They're kind of I don't really know what the hell to label them as, but um yeah, it's just groove metal to me. I don't really know if I would really consider that a real genre. I mean, I know it might be by definition, but to me, um, the thing about Pantera is that they are pretty much a fusion of the tough guy hardcore style and like thrash metal. Because like think about it, thrash metal really was inspired from hardcore punk. um,
I mean, it
Pantera,
really is too.
Pantera has the breakdowns. Like if you listen to Vulgar Display of Power, there's nothing but breakdowns in that album. There's insane killer breakdowns, like even some explosive ones. Like that's the thing about Pantera is that like the vocalist Phil Anselmo. I mean, he's like legit a tough guy, dude. If you like look at him, I mean, he's like the
I
exact
mean, he is the definition of tough guy hardcore because you know when you
exactly. That's
listen to
exactly yeah.
all the
And like you
breakdowns,
listen to his vocals
they
and
go,
his vocals, you know. Yeah, like you hear like his vocals and everything has those tough guy sort of vocals, and that's a huge thing in hardcore.
and
But
you
then
know
you
where
have
those vocals,
Dimebag, Daryl with all the crazy like shredding guitar solos and
those
stuff. Like,
solos, those solos. If you listen to the solos on Cowboys from Hell, and then if you listen to any deathcore album now, the crazy solos like the arpeggios and crazy whammy stuff, that's on a lot of deathcore. What I wanted to say is go listen to Phil Anselmo do vocals. And listen to Jamie Josta from Hatebreed do
yeah.
vocals. And if you tell me they don't sound similar, like obviously there is some influence there.
And that's the
And
thing, and that's the thing because like you do realize that Pantera has influenced almost every single metalcore band on the face of the planet. Like it seems like every single metalcore band, whenever I watch them in interviews, they always say that Pantera has had an influence on them, whether it's a huge influence or just an influence. I mean, Trivium is heavily influenced by Pantera. Um, you know, it's just it seems like you know a lot of these bands, early metalcore bands, were influenced by that. You know.
I mean,
Um,
I definitely am. And like for me, I don't listen to a lot of metalcore anymore. But like you realize I've only been into metal for two years, maybe.
yeah.
Um,
Well, me too. It's
and
been
I mean
about 2 years.
the first metal bands I ever got into were like Iron Maiden. You know, I had my heavy metal, and then Metallica. Yes, I was a Metallica kid, but not a Black Album kid. I was a Master of Puppets kid, which in some cases can be worse. And then I was a Killswitch Engage kid, and The
Dude,
End of Heartache,
I love that band.
The End of Heartache,
Mhm.
and their new album Incarnate are literally like I can go back and listen to Incarnate, and I know every word, every single song to that album because that album is
Strength of the
just so.
mind.
Yeah, dude. So the breakdown from what is this? The second song on the album? Let me get the CD. It's like right here.
I haven't listened to the whole album in its entirety,
The second song,
but
Hate by Design. The breakdown. Well, actually, the
yes.
breakdown from Straight to the Mind. Gather all your pain and
Mhm.
suffering.
Yeah.
It's a very positive album because if you listen to this album
Mhm.
and then if you go back and listen to hardcore punk, it has a lot of the same attitude to it. And you can
Yeah,
even
and
I
that's the
listened to an
thing.
interview and the vocalist even said, um, yeah, like the vocalist even said, when I was writing this album, hardcore punk had a huge influence on me.
Mhm.
I forget what interview. I think it was a Metal Hammer interview. I'm not sure, but that always stuck with me.
And I don't know, I feel like a lot of your modern bands that are using breakdowns, I don't know if they're so much influenced by hardcore punk as they are really a lot of the metal bands because like especially like in deathcore, I don't feel like deathcore is really inspired from true hardcore. I feel like
Yeah, because when I listen to hardcore punk, right,
yeah.
and then I listen to deathcore, I almost see no similarity. Hardcore punk is very quick and very unproduced, very very raw, like some early black metal was, and
Yeah.
it's very straight into the point. While deathcore, they build up that. And even a lot of deathcore is overproduced in my opinion, but it's perfect the way it sounds, or they have
Mhm.
that ambience. And the thing I love about deathcore is the ambience.
Mhm.
And if you don't like, I almost call it ambient deathcore or atmospheric
I know what you're
deathcore.
talking about.
Like if you listen to Holy War by The Art Is Murder,
Yeah. Doesn't
I
Dioda's Murder
classify.
do a little bit of that? Yeah.
Yeah, they're atmospheric deathcore in my opinion. That's what I am. That's what my solo project is, atmospheric deathcore.
That's interesting. And that brings up another topic that I might get into later about my goddamn band, but I don't even want to bring that up right now though. But yeah,
Oh, you mean blackcore?
I'll bring it up. But yeah, it's definitely interesting. And like I said, if you want to go even earlier back to metalcore, you could even say Suicidal Tendencies if you really want to go that far back in terms of
Oh
metal
yeah, Suicidal Tendencies is like crossover hardcore is some of the
or
best
crossover
music.
thrash.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because I mean, however you want to label it, it's all something coming from the same things. It's hardcore
thrashcore. I
punk.
mean, there's so many different things you could call it.
Oh, thrashcore. There's a band called Anxiety Attack, and they had this album called Thrashcore Confessional, and it is so good. Well, anyway, I actually saw Suicidal Tendencies recently, in February. So not recent. No, March 7th. I have the poster on my wall. That was one of the best shows I've ever been to. It wasn't a dive, but it was Crowbar, Havoc, one of my favorite thrash bands, and Suicidal Tendencies actually pulled me up on stage for I Saw Your Mommy and Your Mommy's Dead, and it was so sick. But yeah, that was such an energetic show. And Dave
Yeah.
Lombardo, one of my favorite drummers of all time, I stood in front of him, and like while all the other kids were moshing, I was like dumbfounded staring at Dave Lombardo play drums right in front of me. Sick.
Yeah. But yeah, like I mean, I guess if you really want to go that far back in terms of early metalcore days, you could say Suicidal Tendencies. Because in my opinion, what metalcore is a true fusion of metal and hardcore punk. That's what it is by definition. So you can take a band like Suicidal Tendencies and pretty much say that. I mean, but then again, it's still like because like in my opinion, it's the same thing with like thrash metal. Like what thrash metal is just heavy metal or speed metal just combined with hardcore punk. I
The issue
mean,
for me when I hear
you know,
metalcore, I think Memphis Mayfire.
well, it's just it's there's so many different shades of metalcore. There's so many different.
There's melodic metalcore, which for me,
Yes,
I don't know
that
if
is
you
probably
agree
my
with this.
favorite.
Melodic metalcore for me is my pop music.
That
Um,
is what I really go to if I just want to feel happy. Like that is like I don't. It's
I
weird,
mean,
but
like if you listen to like I'm a pretty like I don't say I'm a pretty metal guy, but let me go to this album because I have it on my computer. Um, I mean, I miss out oftentimes when a band comes here and I miss out on seeing them. I'll definitely check it out them more. And this album called "This Light I Hold" by Memphis Mayfire came out in 2016, and it is just a pretty good album. And Dylan, I recommend you listen to this. It's just a pretty feel good metalcore album.
Yeah, and the way I see it, like, I mean, I have albums like that too. It's just like I'll actually get into that in a second, but I will say this: I feel like metalcore also kind of came in. Give me a second. Oh, I was gonna say. I feel like metalcore kind of came in waves, because like, you know, I guess, okay, let's put it this way: you have the first wave of metalcore. But I don't know much about this. Keep in mind, so if anybody of you can correct me on this, please go ahead and do so. But
Deathcore, the only first wave deathcore bands I really know of is like Job for a Cowboy.
yeah, I'm talking about like first wave metalcore though, like, and I'm not even talking about like going early back to like Suicidal Tendencies, Pantera. I feel like those are kind of like the proto bands that kind of led way into the genre. But I feel like if we're talking about purely bands coming out of waves, I feel like the first wave of metalcore was more of like the tough guy hardcore bands using a more metal guitar tone, and this actually stuff like Hatebreed, I guess. And from what I heard, that this was actually called metallic hardcore. Now I don't know, and I know Raya's watching the stream, and I know you might actually know more about this than I do because you're more of a hardcore punk fan than I am. But yeah, I feel like for at least what I've heard, metallic hardcore is also like the first wave of metalcore, and then you have the second wave of metalcore, which is melodic metalcore. That is stuff like Killswitch
Pop
Engage,
music and metal.
Dying, Trivium, All That Remains,
Memphis
all these
Mayfire.
bands. Yeah, so it's like,
Devil Wears Prada.
yeah, so these are the bands from like the mid 2000s that basically what they were metalcore bands starting to take a huge influence from melodic death metal, and
Would you
bands like In
say
Flames
would you say
and
that
stuff like that.
melodic would you say a metalcore really? Like, cause Slipknot, it was the 2000s. Slipknot had a huge influence, and what was Slipknot doing? They're taking harsh vocals, clean vocals, down-tuned guitars, multiple guitars, basses, all that stuff, and fusing it together into this one thing. And I consider Slipknot their own genre because
Yeah,
they're
me
so
too. I've always kind of
diverse.
just considered them their own thing. Yeah, they are very
But
diverse. They even have the
they
whole
have a
hip hop
huge
influence in it.
influence on metalcore, in my opinion. And
They do. They do. They have a huge influence on the genre, and they even had a huge influence on deathcore, from what I understand. Um,
oh yeah, I'm huge into Slipknot. So yeah.
yeah, me too. I love that. I love all their albums. But yeah, it's like I do feel like they definitely had a huge impact on the genre as well as Pantera, but I wouldn't go as far as to say that Slipknot is necessarily a metalcore band. I just kind of feel weird saying that. But I I like um I like all their albums though, and I absolutely love Slipknot. But um yeah, I don't know. Like I was saying though, I think melodic metalcore is more so like the second wave, and like I said, these bands were taking huge influence from melodic death metal. Bands like In Flames, At the Gates, Dark Tranquillity, stuff like that, Amon Amarth, and basically with these bands like Trivium, for example, their first album is heavily influenced by In Flames. You can clearly tell. I mean, even Matt Heafy is a huge In Flames fan. It's one of his favorite bands of all time, and you can just hear it in their guitar
In
melodies.
Flames fan.
You can just hear it in their melodies though, for like the melodic metalcore bands. Like they have that riff, and I don't really know exactly how to explain that riff. It's like, let me grab my guitar real quick. I don't know if I can really explain it that well. It's like it's the riff that every single metalcore band uses, and it's
Oh,
always I
I
forget what you
know. It's
call them.
always like, dude,
They
every
palm
time
mute the
I hear a
first
song,
string. They palm mute the first string, and then they hit the third string, and they always hit these notes. Which is like, and then they throw in like a pinch harmonic there or something like that, or like,
yeah, it's like dun 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 dun
yeah,
dun
yeah,
dun
stuff
dun
like
dun
that.
dun. Wah!
Yeah, stuff like that. You know, every single metalcore band I've ever heard uses a riff like that. Like it's pretty much
Every
become like
single
what you
one.
could call like the stereotypical metalcore riff. Every band uses it, and I've even heard deathcore bands use it. I've heard Suicide Silence use a riff like that once, or twice, or actually a few times probably. But no, that's not what I mean. But I'm talking about like the earlier stuff. I've heard it. I've heard it on the first
Oh,
album. On I think it's
I was
Destruction of
thinking.
a Statue. I heard a riff like that. But like, yeah,
I was
it's
thinking
like
No Time to Bleed.
it's like just that riff is everywhere. Like you can't escape it. So that you know where that riff originally came from, right? First of all, that riff didn't come from metalcore. That riff originally came from heavy metal. I've heard bands like Iron Maiden and Judas
Oh
Priest
yeah,
using that riff
definitely.
before
Iron Maiden,
anybody
Judas
used that riff.
Priest.
Iron Maiden
Iron
and
Maiden
Judas
and Judas
Priest.
Priest started that whole like Iron Maiden. If like I'm a huge nerd about Iron Maiden, like first metal band I ever got into, and like I own a lot of their early stuff, and I'm like all super crazy about what pressing I have and stuff. Um, Dude, they're like the best like sing along bands. I'm
Oh,
giving them
definitely
my
for singing
chance.
along and stuff, dude. I'm getting a lot of their stuff on vinyl too, and it's like,
Dude, I have an original pressing of Power Slave and an original pressing of Somewhere in Time.
yeah,
Like,
I just I was like I said um yeah I feel like Iron Maiden and Judas Priest really started that entire sort of riff like that, like stuff like that. You know, that whole melodic sort of riff, because those bands were very melodic bands. And then what happened was melodic death metal. What happened was I actually feel like that riff that we're talking about right now, the one that kind of heavy metal bands started, like Iron Maiden, Judas Priest. I feel like that also kind of carried on into thrash metal. I mean, I heard bands like Slayer using that. You know, the song "Raining Blood." That riff is literally used in that song.
did you ask Joseph if he knows the song Raining Blood?
Yeah, but like you get what I'm saying. Like I know you
Like,
know the
dun
song
dun
"Raining Blood,"
dun.
but like,
If you take the same notes from Raining Blood, dum dum dun 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 dum dum dun dun dum dum dun 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 dun.
yeah, it's
Like
like
I'm taking the
I'm trying to
same
think.
notes.
Okay, so it's like
Every band uses the same notes. They just change the rhythm and call it a new
so yeah,
song.
but yeah, like I've heard Slayer using it. I've even heard I swear I might have heard Metallica use that. So yeah, it's like that's the thing. Like that riff, like that melodic riff, it originally came from um Iron Maiden, Judas Priest, and then like thrash bands started to use it, and then it kind of carried on to death metal, but not so much the really brutal sort of death metal because they weren't very melodic sort of bands all the time. They use melodies every once in a while, but um the bands that I feel like really started to use that riff were the more melodic death metal bands. Like I said, In Flames, they use that riff all the time, and that's the thing. Those bands, even at the gates, I've heard them use it a lot. So they kind of made it their own thing, or they kind of based that riff around the entire genre. Like whenever people tell me that is a metalcore riff, I say no, that's a melodic death metal riff. Or even before that, we could say that's a heavy metal riff. I mean, it's really it's a melodic metal riff, and that carried on in a metalcore, and that's what melodic metalcore is. It's a combination of melodic death metal and metalcore. Boom, melodic metalcore, right? So that's what all these bands were inspired from. And then of course, so we discussed the first wave of metalcore and the second wave of metalcore. Then there's the third wave of metalcore, which I feel like is just like the new age stuff. It's, you know, Asking Alexandria, Black Veil Brides, stuff like that. You know, they kind of took the riff that I was just talking about from
Bro.
like the second wave of metalcore and then just kind of made it more, I guess, mainstream, and added a lot of post-hardcore influence and elements and stuff like that, and a lot of pop punk influence as well. I kind of feel like that's what happened. I mean, I don't know for sure. I just recently really got into these bands, but I don't know. But yeah, that's pretty much that. So yeah, we pretty much just discussed where that damn riff came from. But yeah, but in terms of the breakdown in general, like where the actual breakdown came from.
Wait, we should do this in unison. Let's do. Hold up.
Huh?
Hold up 1 second.
Yeah. So what's up, guys? It's just you and me now. How's y'all doing? Is y'all good? I hope y'all goods. People. What up? Guys. Hello? What up? It's just you and me now. This is awkward. But whatever.
Yeah, I'm back. Sorry.
Yo, what's up? What's up? Alright. But yeah.
Oh, let's do the Reign of Darkness breakdown. Dum dum. Dum dum. Bing bum bum bum.
Destruction of innocence. But yeah, I was gonna say. So yeah, I don't know. I watched a video by Mike Seatown, and he was discussing the origin of the breakdown. And Count Blagger is also in that video if you guys want to see that. But yeah, I was watching that video, and it really made me think. Actually, I mean, I don't know that much about these bands. I know he's like way more into hardcore, you know. So he started talking about how a lot of your 80s hardcore punk bands, they're kind of the ones that I guess started the breakdown, like, but it was more so the more tough guy sort of bands, right? From what he says, bands like Judge, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they kind of used to break down in a different way. It wasn't like the stuff that you hear, like the dun 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 stuff like that, right? So it wasn't stuff like that. It was just different. It was just very different. All it was breaking down the main riff of like the main verse. You know, that's apparently what it was. It was just about taking that riff and breaking it down and making it slower and heavier. So that's what I guess the hardcore punk bands did in the 80s. And then thrash metal, I guess, adopted it. You know, that's how it was kind of how I thought of it. Is that, you know, how thrash metal bands were so heavily influenced by hardcore punk?
Yeah.
So like bands like Metallica, Sepultura, and Slayer, like they took, I guess, the breakdown from hardcore punk because they were so influenced by the genre, and they kind of turned it into their own thing. And this is where you hear like the breakdown of Raining Blood. So the breakdown in that is just like how exactly does it go? It's like dun 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 dun. And honestly, that riff is like a very foreshadowing in the metalcore, not gonna lie. But yeah, so that's that pretty much. I mean, I feel like thrash kind of adopted it. So like it started, so basically what I'm trying to say is the breakdown started with hardcore punk, right? And then thrash metal adopted it and made it its own thing. You get what I mean? And like the breakdown in One by Metallica is like dun 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 dun.
It's funny. I was listening to that song today.
Yeah. So yeah, like that breakdown, and you know, that's the thing. I feel like those breakdowns really influenced the modern breakdown. I feel like the hardcore punk breakdowns, at least from the 80s, didn't really, I guess, influence modern metal by any means. It more so influenced thrash metal back in the 80s, and then the thrash metal breakdowns inspired the modern breakdown. Do you know what I mean? They basically, the modern bands just took the breakdowns that Metallica and Slayer did and just made them even slower, even heavier, even more crushing. You know?
Yeah.
So that's just kind of how I see it. That's kind of how I see where the breakdown came from. But I have been looking though and trying to see, like, you know, the earliest like forms of the breakdown. You know,
I don't remember if I can go back far enough in my internet history to find it. I watched this video a couple months ago. It was like the evolution of the breakdown, and it played, you know, some hardcore punk, and then it just like some different bands, especially like some underground bands that I'd never heard of before. And it really just went. It was from 1984 to 2014.
yeah.
And it was just really good.
I think I've seen that video. But yeah, Joe, you've listened to a lot of hardcore punk from the 80s. Is there any bands you can think of that have done breakdowns? Maybe not so much in the modern way, but just breaking down the verse and making it just slower and I guess heavier. You know what I mean?
Minor Threat.
I was gonna say that. Yeah.
Let me think of
I
what
was gonna
song
say
it
that
is.
Minor Threat.
If you give me a second, they're my favorite hardcore punk band of all time. My third favorite band of all time.
Dude, they're really, really good. And that's the thing, like thrash metal, like thrash bands like Metallica, they were heavily influenced by bands like Minor Threat, you know?
Hold on, I'm gonna find a song where I can find an early breakdown.
And it's really cool too because it's like my my cousin Jimmy, he's a huge punk rocker and he's all into punk rock and hardcore punk, crust punk, all that stuff, right? He's anything punk, right? And we were talking about like breakdowns and like, you know, early hardcore punk and everything, and he's like a huge Minor Threat fan, Bad Brains, stuff like that, and he actually has a vinyl collection of a lot of stuff like that. He has
Yeah,
those.
Screaming at a Wall is really where you can hear In My Eyes too. Out of Step, Guilty of Being White. These all songs, Minor Threat, what they do with their longer songs, some are ballady, like 1 minute songs. They would have a thing where I can't find this song. I think it was maybe Bottled Violence.
I'm
But
not
they
sure.
take a cool riff where it goes na 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 na, sort of from Bottled Violence, and then at the end of the song they go na 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 na. It's not noticeable that it's
Oh,
like
I see what
slower.
you see. That's exactly what I mean by a breakdown.
And that's
Yeah.
taking it. And there's even I don't know if it's on their first album, but there is a riff where they do. It goes. So the opening riff is na 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 na, and then towards the end of the song they go da na 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 da na 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 na, and then it picks up na 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 na.
Yeah, that's exactly what I mean. Like they take the riff and they just break it down and make it even slower. That's what I mean. That's what an early hardcore punk breakdown was like. You know, it wasn't like your modern breakdowns. It wasn't anything like that. You know.
Yeah, but it was still. I mean, back then in 1984, they had no idea what a breakdown would end up being.
Yeah, I
You
know
know,
exactly because they weren't even called breakdowns back then. You know, at least from what I've
I
heard.
mean, I'm
Right?
trying to take the pop music fundamental parts of the song. So like the verse, chorus, maybe the bridge would be considered a breakdown. Like even when I'm in the car with my family and my sister's listening to pop music, I can hear something that would be a breakdown. Like the song by Ed Sheeran, I think it's called Shape of You or something. I hear
Mhm.
something that could potentially be a breakdown where they take the core riff of that song, which is of course standard chords, like
Mhm.
super easy, E standard, but they do slow it down
Mhm.
and the tempo slows down, and I'm like, oh, it's a breakdown in pop music. There you go.
Well, yeah, because like a breakdown could be found in anything. Like literally, all a breakdown is taking a riff and just breaking it down and making it slower. That's what it is. So it's like any kind of music can do that. You know, it doesn't just have to be, you know, metal or punk or whatever. It can be made even hard rock nowadays has been doing that. You know, like you have bands like Breaking Benjamin, they're doing breakdowns. You know what I mean? Like,
When angels fall.
yeah, their new album is pretty good. I prefer some of their older stuff though. I don't know.
That's the only song I know by them. The
I
song
might
by
get some of
When
their stuff
Angels
on vinyl.
Fall, Broken Wings. It's the
They're
only
a
song
really
I
good
know.
band though, honestly.
August Burns Red is my favorite metalcore band. Ah, ha, ha. Just kidding.
Yeah, and then I
I've
guess we
seen
just kind of get to the modern breakdown, which you know it's used everywhere.
every genre of every but every band has their own style of breakdown. Like Ballad is Murder, they have their own kind of particular, sound when it comes to their breakdowns. So for an Autopsy, those bands, they have their own kind of breakdown style.
Mhm. Well, yeah, I don't know. I think I think a lot of the modern bands though, like using breakdowns, it's more so the core bands. You know what I mean? You don't hear black metal bands or death metal bands using it that much. I mean, you hear grindcore bands using it quite a bit. I mean, it's grindcore. You
Revenge.
know, it's influenced by, you know, hardcore punk, but Yeah, or like, yeah, even Revenge, actually, they did a breakdown, which is absolutely insane. They literally just took the riff, the same goddamn riff, and just slowed it down to like a slow tempo and just made it so freaking heavy and crushing. Like, that is one of the most mosh friendly riffs I've ever heard. And yeah, like, in terms of,
Mosh friendly. I
it's
should change my YouTube channel to
honestly,
Mosh friendly.
it's honestly just one of the heaviest breakdowns I've ever heard in my life. I mean, it's to be expected. It was Revenge, but it's like that song, though, Scum Defection, like that breakdown is so slow and heavy. It's just like, it's so gnarly. I know I just used that word, but yeah.
So gnarly. Whatever.
But yeah, it's more so the core
Surfers.
bands, you know, like metalcore, deathcore, these sort of bands are really used to breakdowns quite a bit. I don't know. You don't hear it so much in just regular death metal. You do hear it though, I will admit, like especially in brutal death metal. Like I've heard Catalepsy do breakdowns, you know. Anything like Slammy or anything like that. I've even heard Cannibal Corpse do a breakdown. I mean, it's honestly everywhere. And
Death
so,
did a breakdown on spiritual healing.
oh really? I still haven't listened to that album. I probably should. But yeah. And in terms of like, okay, this is a really weird genre to bring up when discussing breakdowns because this is honestly one of the ones that has the least amount of breakdowns.
Hip
That's
hop.
black metal. No, I'm talking about black metal in terms of metal genres. But I believe it or not, I have actually heard a breakdown in a black metal song. Dark Throne did a breakdown back in like 91 on A Blazing Northern Sky album. The song Paragon Belial. I don't know if you've heard that song or not, but towards the end of the song, they go into like literally it's a freaking break. Like it literally goes like I kid you not, it has a raw production too, and the guitars sound hazy as hell. But it just goes right into a dun 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 dun. So they just kind of, it's just so weird that how they just went into that. Like I was not expecting that the first time I heard it. You know.
Mm. Yeah. So do we need to
Question,
finish?
do you like sex? Of course, sex is great. Huh?
So do we need to whoa,
What?
hold up, Don, I'll send you a message.
Okay.
Hold on one second.
Yeah. Anyways.
All right. So I mean, we kind of went through everything.
Yeah, we pretty much did.
You know. So I guess we can end it now.
Yep.
I mean, it's unfortunate we didn't get a Theo on, but I hope you guys enjoyed
You might as well change the name of the stream to just with Dylan then if that's the
with
case.
Dylan. Yeah, I'll change it real quick. Zach changed his name. All right, so yeah, yeah. I hope this helps. Maybe we'll do more streams like this. But now we know where the breakdown came from.
Damn, Zach, that's a good name by the way. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, oh my damn. Raya's roast right there. Oh god. Dude, that was right, that was harsh. That was really, really harsh. Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you later.
Okay. All right, bye.